Ari Aster, you were recently nominated for an Independent Spirit Award for the first feature, along with Tony as Best Actress. Also did really well at the Gotham Awards, where Tony won. Congratulations!
Oh, thank you, thank you. It's nice to see the film being recognized and to see Tony's performance being recognized. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that even though it looks like Hereditary is making an impact on the awards scene, that the this genre is still there's still a bias against this genre when it comes to accolades and awards generally?
I mean, I guess historically there has been, and then there are like all the notable exceptions, like Silence of the Lambs and The Exorcist and Get Out a couple years ago, and or last year rather. Yeah, so I mean, it's always a nice surprise to see the film being nominated or remembered because it came out in June.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and yet it still seems to be making impact. I think that's because there's something about this particular film that stays with you for quite some time. And I'll just say personally, I found it so confronting because I wasn't expecting it. I just thought it was going to be a film about kind of grief and family drama, and there was going to be a bit of thriller and horror in there, but it wasn't going to be that bad. And then by the end of it, I was so transfixed, and I haven't stopped talking about it. And I know other people who say, "Did you see Hereditary? What about that scene?" And I'm just wondering, like, it's your first feature. People are still talking to you about it, but what do they generally want to talk to you about when it comes to this film?
I mean, people often ask like where the story came from, and that's always the hardest thing to answer because I don't remember what the impetus was. Often people want to just talk to me about the impact it had. People come out either very they feel like either assaulted or they've got notes to give me on how to make a scarier movie. But yeah, I would say people ask how personal the film is, and the film is it's born of very personal feelings, but ultimately the horror genre is a great filter through which to to pass like personal things, and out comes something else. Out comes an invention. And I've also found that it's a way of that especially the horror genre, because if you want to tell, like, for instance, like a fatalistic or more nihilistic story, like that tends to actually be a virtue in that genre, whereas in any other genre it's not, certainly on a commercial level. And so yeah, for me, it was a way of kind of finding the catharsis in an otherwise very bleak story.
Yeah. I mentioned how the film starts off with about certain themes of grief and dysfunction, but obviously there's still a lot of dread, and it builds and builds and builds, and then it veers off into this genuinely confronting, dark, and quite terrifying story. And developing the script, I would have thought would have been quite a challenge, because you can probably show a lot and show your hand very early on, or you can do what you did, which is just build to the point where you're almost going to burst. So I'm just wondering how difficult it was to kind of get the script right, and whether you had to make a lot of changes throughout the process.
Well, I would say the writing process was actually a pretty fast one. I've written a lot of screenplays, and that was one of the films that really poured out of me. And it started with a few set pieces that are still there. Like there are some big moments in the film that that stand as like significant turning points in the story, and those were images that came to me really early on. And then the family dynamic was something that was sort of, it felt like it was inside of me, and didn't really need it. I developed it from there, but it kind of, it felt like it came to me fully formed, like who this family was. And so really it was a matter of just kind of building a structure and like a skeleton for all of these ideas. And, I wanted to make a film that had sort of an Ouroboros quality, a film that's about grief, but it's also about a family eating itself in grief. And so it was really just about hanging all of these threads on the same structure.
Yeah. So thinking through some of the more memorable scenes, like there's so many for me, like the classroom with Peter where he begins to unravel, and Steve's demise was very shocking, and a climactic scene in the treehouse, and Annie's breakdown. I'm just curious though, you're the mastermind behind the whole thing, but is there anything in particular that you think back and think, yeah, that scene in particular is what I love the most?
I'm very happy with, I guess this is a spoiler, but I'm very happy with the sequence in which Charlie loses her head, and then the subsequent like reaction to that, and the family, kind of all like it's sort of a montage of suffering that that culminates in the camera moving down into the grave with the with Charlie's coffin. That's something that plays pretty much exactly the way I wanted it to. Yeah, the film is it's a weird thing. It's this, it's about madness, and it's about people following each other into madness. And the film sort of takes like it forms this sympathetic attachment to the mother and the son, who are both going through PTSD, and they're also kind of moving into this unhinged space, and the film follows them into that. And so, the challenge was like, how do I make a satisfying horror film that ends on a literal note? Because there's nothing worse than the "it was all a dream" ending. But or as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing worse than that. But at the same time, where the metaphor, the central metaphor, I should maybe say metaphors, are still functioning. And so I hope that's the case for people, that it's that things are tied up, but that things also remain open. I talk to a lot of people who walk out of the film and they feel very ambivalent and about where the movie went. And I like that. For this film, I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke to Alex recently, and he gave me a lot of insight about how the film affected him during filming and months after. And he noted that he's probably never felt more vulnerable. And there were certain scenes in which you really pushed him to places that he never thought he could go. And it made me wonder, like, when you're directing a cast and you're doing something like this, are you conscious of how it's going to affect them during filming? And are you playing on that to try to get or elicit something really raw and different, or are you always trying to contain it in case it kind of affects them personally?
I cast Alex because he gave an audition in which he really he went all the way there. And Alex is very method. So he really does, he really kind of stays in this emotional place for the duration of the shoot, which looks like it's probably a bit dangerous. And so I think there's a responsibility to, kind of take care of him, and to make sure that, take care of him, but, to to respect that he's giving a lot, and to make sure that I'm conscious of that, and not allowing him to, harm himself. And then for somebody like Tony, she's, it's like a faucet for her where she can turn it on and turn it off. She's such a pro, and so there's no worrying about Tony. She's able to go there and to pull right back out. And so I think I think my job, especially because I'm somebody who shot lists very thoroughly. Everything, every shot in the film was planned out before getting to set. And so that can really box actors in, especially if you do it poorly. And so I try to create an environment while I'm shot listing, when I'm thinking about how I'm going to shoot this thing, where the actors can play and really, and not feel shackled to whatever the design is. Whether I was successful or not, I don't know, but I do know that it was exciting to watch them, kind of test the bounds of where they could go. Also there's a danger of, if you're being if you're working on that operatic a register, when things are that heightened, and when you're kind of playing with melodrama, which ultimately the film is, and with melodrama, I mean, it's the operative term there is it's melos, right, which means music. So it's drama as music, and so ultimately, it's like, how do we embrace these emotions in a naked, like, unreserved way without being ridiculous? And so that's also my job, is to sort of watch and make sure that there is like a tether for them, and that there's a net that they can jump off the deep end, but they're going to land, and because it can be very scary to just kind of let go, and attack these like big ugly emotions, because you can look silly, you can look ridiculous, and so I try to create a space where they knew that if they were going too far, or if it wasn't working, like I'll let them know.
Yeah. Well, mate, congratulations on such a wonderful film, and all the success that it's having. Tony's given the performance of her career, according to some really important critics, and that's a lot of that is probably because of your great direction. So good luck at this award season, and thanks for talking to us.
Thank you for taking the time.